As we approach term 2 of 2022, I know that many of us are really struggling with this idea of engagement. I've had countless conversations with educators over the past few months about how engagement in lessons is dropping. Have you noticed that too? Let me know in the comments below. How are your kids right now? Share it in the comments, because I'm hearing over and over and over again a sense of exasperation about what's happened to the levels of attention and engagement in our classes. And that's what I want us to talk about today.
Hi, I'm Selena Woodward, and I'm an English and drama teacher, university lecturer, and with edufolios.org, a big-time reflective practitioner. So how can reflective practice help you grow your teaching skills, fall in love with your profession all over again, and help you nail accreditation and teacher registration with less stress and less work? Well, this is the Reflective Teacher Podcast.
Welcome back to another episode of the Reflective Teacher Podcast. As always, I'm your host, Selena Woodward. Right now, it's kind of time for a bit of rest and relaxation. And my goodness, do we all need that? And so do our students. As I said at the beginning of this video, we are all noticing a drop in engagement and possibly a little bit of a drop in our students' focus and their ability to stay on task in our lessons. How are you finding that with your students? Comment below what is showing up for you right now. Do you remember the episode where we talked about feelings monsters in term 1 of this year? I'm going to shove the link to that episode for you in the description below this video and at the show notes at edufolios.org/140. Today's episode is a conversation about what resources do we have available to us to help us tweak what we're going to do in term 2 to try and understand what we can do to increase our impact when it comes to this idea of engagement. So what does engagement mean to you is the first question that I really want to ask. Number 1, what does engagement mean to you? When it comes to reflecting on progress and impact in our reflective practice, whether that be for accreditation or just to evaluate how things are going, what does engagement actually need to be? Now, often I hear working with IT, we need iPads because the kids are engaged. We need this because it engages the kids. But engagement is far more than everybody's on task and sitting quietly and getting on with their work. It's very easy to be unengaged but compliant. So what we need to consider first and foremost is, how do we know what engagement is and how are we planning to measure the level of engagement and the impact that engagement is having on our students? So I want you to think about planning for that. So as I share these strategies and these thoughts with you, I want you to think about your planning for term 2, and I want you to think about which ones of these appeal to you, which ones speak to you and your kids right now, and how could you design learning to measure the impact of changing things up when it comes to engagement in your classrooms. The first thing that you need to do, point number 2, is check in with your kids. There's a lot of research happening right now to demonstrate that all of this changing and shifting in the world because of COVID, because of floods, because of everything that's been going on, has really deregulated everyone, including your kids. Now, I've seen comments in forums where people have gone, oh, just give up, with your high school students. If it's not about TikTok and Fortnite, don't bother. That's just not true. These kids are passionate human beings who are really overwhelmed by all of the problems that surround them. For some of them, it's crippling. There's a war going on. There's refugees everywhere. There's a climate crisis. There are so many things that our young people want to stand up and talk about. And I want you to think about who your kids are and what it is that they value in the world they're in today. What is it that is going on for them emotionally and socially? Because understanding that will help you to create a learning environment in which they feel engaged in a way that is meaningful to them. You could say engaged in a way that is connected to the real world, to what they value, and to the difference they want to make. It's all well and good dismissing kids and saying things like, oh, TikTok or Fortnite or not at all. But actually there's a lot more to them than that. And that's very dismissive. And I don't really like it, if I'm honest with you. The kids I teach would not just be about Fortnite and TikTok. Need to connect with them and ask them. Even in the primary years, do some work with them around how they're feeling. Do it in health education. Discuss with them what it is that they want to see in the world. What is it that they want to know in the world? And use that information to help you plan to bring in those thinking skills, those themes, and that knowledge into your other subjects. That's called being connected to what they value, the value they want to bring into the world. Thirdly, I need you to check in with yourself, because if you are not rocking up to your classroom in a place of centered calm, you're not going to be able to connect with them. You're not going to be able to be the support they need to tackle these big, wicked problems head on. You're probably going to be part of the problem. We've all been there. Okay, so go and listen to the episode with Jen. I will again put that in the description if that's something you need to consider. Listen to yourself and your body. And I really hope that you've taken time over the Easter break to just switch off, to come back to yourself, to breathe and to release, because we are all in this together. In fact, it would be a really healthy thing to have that conversation with your students. This is how I'm feeling. Model it to them. Model how you are dealing with these emotions. Model that for them so they understand that this is not something that they alone are feeling. And you can model how you process those emotions. Model what you can do to support and help. Model it to them. Think about how you can connect how you're feeling, release it, and model that to your students, just to get on an even playing field with them. Fourthly, I want you to think about how you're going to go about creating your learning objectives. Now, of course, you're going to have curriculum content that you need to cover. As an English teacher, I might have to write to persuade, or write to argue, or study a particular novel with a particular theme. But is there a way in which you can bring in what you've learned about these students that you are working with, bring in what you've learned about how they see the world, and connect the difference they want to make with the skills that you are going to be teaching? Is there a way where you can co-create learning, co-create with them, co-create with outside bodies like charities and doing research, co-create with the community? Are there ways that you can bring meaning into what you're teaching using co-creation tools? Can you give them the responsibility of leading learning sometimes? Are you able to step back and learn from them? Co-creation is a powerful engagement tool. It's a powerful efficacy tool, but it's not easy to plan for, is it? You've got to make sure that it's all safe and you've got a bunch of resources for them to use. But it is an incredibly powerful engagement opportunity because it creates meaning. It allows your students the efficacy to lead their learning by co-creating with somebody else who has something they need or something they want. So consider co-creating in your lessons, planning for co-creation. And remember, when you are co-creating, that you are drawing on both adults and students. So you can bring in external people to talk in your science lessons, in your maths lessons, in your English lessons. You can use YouTube videos and talk about experts. You can do whatever you need to create co-created opportunities with community. Finally, I want you to think about how you can integrate learning. Now, this is really tricky for us high school teachers. I want you to think about how what you're doing in English could line up with what's happening in science, could line up with what's happening in industry, could line up with what's happening at home and in the world. Can you connect all of these things together? So it's co-created, it's integrated across subjects, it is also connected to the real world. Can you do that? This is not easy, but even if you can do one of these three things, I guarantee you will see a shift. You will empower your kids. And remember, the last thing I'm going to say is when you're planning to use any of these techniques, you need to plan to measure the impact. So maybe do a reflection before you teach on the levels of engagement. Maybe use the feelings monsters. And again, I'll add a link in the description so you can find those to test where they're at, and do it again and again so that you can check in with them and you've got that data, continual assessment of how they're feeling, what they're doing, how are you going to measure engagement, and then map that against the results you are seeing. Are you seeing convergent and divergent thinking now? Are you seeing critical thinking? What is the goal that you want to achieve with this engagement? And how are you planning milestones to continually assess where they are at? Every lesson, once a week, maybe negotiate that with them. I'm not talking a huge essay. I'm talking a quick form on Microsoft Forms or monsters, feeling monsters, depending on the age of your kids. I'm talking a quick check-in. I'm talking success criteria, assessment strategies that you can use to check the impact of tweaking your tools for engagement. Because I can tell you the risk here is your kids are all having a great time. They're engaged, they're focused, but they're not actually learning what it is you set out to teach them. Now, I have been guilty of that before. I remember one lesson, and I've probably shared this story before, where I was being observed by the IT line manager, and he was my line manager because it was my responsibility to map ICT across 3 different curriculum areas. And I felt an immense pressure to show him what I could do with IT. And I went nuts. I had live webcams to New York. I was doing travel writing. I had teachers in New York talking live to my students. So engaging. They were totally on task. But my lesson outcomes did not match what they were experiencing. So although they were engaged and on task, they were not getting from that lesson what I'd planned to get from that lesson. In fact, these shiny objects were distracting them from learning. And so I didn't actually get a very good grade for that assessment or that observation at all from my line manager because I went too far. And I want to tell you that tale as a cautionary tale. Engagement is not about everybody heads down. Engagement should be about making learning meaningful, making it co-created, making it fit the context of your learners, giving them the opportunity to connect it with what they love doing and what they're passionate about, giving them an opportunity to even explore what that is whilst you're designing your learning. So that's my challenge to you this week. I want you to deeply think about engagement. Comment below which areas here do you feel like you might implement in term 2, and what strategies have you already found for measuring the impact when you tweak the way you are attempting to engage. If we're not going to measure how many minutes kids are heads down and working, how are you going to assess that being on task and engaged equals increase in outcomes, increase in the impact that you're having in your given learning area? Share those in the comments below. Even better, if you reflect on this in your Edufolio, pop the link underneath the video here in YouTube. Let me know which one of these strategies do you think you're going to try. Maybe if you do comment below the video, that will mean that other people will do the same and you'll know exactly who to connect with as you go on this journey of experimentation. Good luck with your planning. Let me know how you go, and I will see you this time next week on the Reflective Teacher podcast. Take care.